Welcome friends to another 40k video. Today we look at the origins of the Legion of the Damned, specifically when they were called the Firehawks. We'll be drawing on issue 99 of White Dwarf, which I believe is the first time the Legion of the Damned were featured. It seems clear here that the Firehawks were the Legion of the Damned, though this has been subsequently made a little more muddy by later lore. Because with 40k, it's never fun unless the answer isn't clear and you can have lots of fun speculating. Anyway, let's get into the article. I'll be reading it directly. Let's start now. In the year 963 of the current millennium, Space Marine chapter Firehawks were ordered into the Crow World subsector. Crow's World and the adjacent planetary systems had fallen into anarchy following heavy raiding by Eldar pirates. The Firehawks' intervention would drive the Eldar from the human worlds, restoring imperial rule and teaching the alien invaders an important lesson. The entire chapter fleet, including the chapter's mobile space fortress, made a successful warp jump from the Piraeus system, a mere 120 light years from Crow's World. The 5 ships, over 800 brethren, and 2,000 other personnel expected to reach Crow's World within no more than 12 hours. They never arrived. 20 years after the event, the chapter was officially declared lost in the warp and presumed destroyed. The great bell of lost souls tolled 1,000 times, and it is said that the Emperor himself ordered a black candle to be lit in the Adeptus Chapel of Fallen Heroes. Later, a routine Imperial patrol passed through the Ork-held system of Jakotal. The squadron uncovered altogether unexpected scenes of devastation. The limited facilities available to the patrol could uncover no clue to the identity of the attacking forces. The incident was noted and passed into the everlasting record of the Administrator, and this was the first of many similar incidents. These incidents aroused the suspicion of the Inquisition. Squadron commanders throughout these sectors were reinforced and ordered to double their routine patrols. The incidents continued apace, increasing rather than declining in frequency and destructive. Even so, no sign of the intruders was discovered for almost a year. Then, a patrol ship in the Maran subsector narrowly avoided a collision with a spacecraft at the Sift jump point. The patrol ship was entering the Sift system as the unidentified craft was leaving. Alerted by the close encounter, the patrol crew scanned the entire jump area and discovered 2 long cylindrical objects within the intruder's projected flight path. They were hauled aboard and proved to be standard Space Marine coffins without identification markings. The coffins were shipped back to Earth and opened by the Adeptus Mechanicus. The coffins themselves were identified as belonging to the Absolute, one of the spacecraft from the vanished Firehawk fleet. Inside were the armoured remains of 2 Space Marines. The unconventional armour, colours, and unofficial insignia puzzled the investigators, but serial numbers tallied with equipment made by or issued by, you've guessed it, the Firehawks. The armoured suits were expected to house members of the Lost Chapter and were carefully broken open. The bodies within were human, but further identification proved impossible due to their advanced state of decay. The full truth would not emerge until almost a year later, when a besieged Imperial research station received unexpected help. The garrison had been attacked suddenly by Ork pirates. After 3 hours of fighting, the situation looked hopeless. Then, without warning, the Orks found themselves attacked in the rear. The ferocity of the fighting appalled even the station's defenders. Within an hour, several hundred Orks had fallen to the mysterious power-armoured figures. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the warriors vanished. Perhaps one of the Firehawk ships. Perhaps they don't just mysteriously appear. Perhaps it's related to their abilities, which we'll talk about a little later, and some sort of teleport technology. This time, they left behind a banner, the gnarled chapter flag of the Firehawks, and inscribed upon it, it was the motto, which translates as, "For the Emperor beyond the point of death." As well as the banner, there was a recorder and sundry other sealed items. These were immediately shipped to Earth. From the data contained in the recorder of the Administrator, it was able to determine exactly what had happened to the Lost Chapter. Following their warp jump, the entire fleet had been caught within a warp storm of terrific intensity. Stunned by the power of the warp, the chapter was forced to endure the attack of powerful warp entities. Ship after ship was destroyed and absorbed into the fabric of the warp. Soon, only one craft remained. By a daring warp exit maneuver, the craft burst from warp space, emerging in the galactic east, thousands of light years of course, and beyond even the psychic light of the Emperor, the Astronomicon. The original survivors numbered 200 brethren. All gene seed had been lost, all initiates killed, and most of the chapter masters were gone. None of the ordinary human staff had survived at all. To make matters worse, the brethren had changed. This change became more obvious over the next few months. Skins began to blacken and blister, flesh began to fester and putrefy. Slowly they began to die. Within days of the transition into normal space, it became obvious that the chapter had been exposed to some form of dangerous mutation or disease. It took many years to navigate a way into the Imperium, during which time almost half the brethren succumbed to the malady. Those who remained were no longer sane. Pain and despair had driven even their hardened minds beyond the point of rationality. Doomed to agonizing deaths, they gradually began obsessed with their fate. Now they only wanted to die. But there were still Marines, still loyal to the Emperor and humanity. They would not die without purpose. So began the unstoppable war of the Legion of the Damned. The Marines elected to remove all insignia from their armour. Instead, their armour would be black, decorated by each brother with whatever emblems of death he chose. The accompanying illustrations, which I'll try and get some of these up in the video, were typical variations. Most brothers employed a similar theme: skeletons, bones, and skulls. All ranks and companies were abolished. Most of the chapter's officers were already dead, and the remaining warriors were too few to make up a fully functional chapter hierarchy. All brothers were to be equal before death, perhaps why they all look the same when they emerge, to help people at key points in history. Leveled by the certainty of their assured extinction, the warriors decided to expend their lives attacking enemies wherever they could be found. The disease had robbed them of their sanity, but not their loyalty, and their condition gave them powers that endow them with incredible fighting ability, and we'll cover a little bit of that in a moment. Just to say, obviously, the law has changed quite a bit since this article came out, but one thing that might tie up: a short story, I believe it's called Animus Malorum by L.J. Golding, if memory serves, did a video on it recently. In that video, we see a member of the Legion of the Damned recruiting people into their ranks and judging other Marines whether they will join or whether they don't want to join, but they have to join anyway. So that's a possible way that they keep their ranks and numbers up. Though who could stop them? I don't know about that. But yeah, that's something that might solve that riddle, where they're all dying and their numbers are still being even and appearing around Imperium. So guys, that really is the main origin stuff covered, but there's also a little bit about actually playing on the tabletop with the Legion of the Damned, and we're going to draw on a few bits of that just to flesh out what I've just gone over about them. We're told that the Legion is not part of any Imperial force and employs a unusual modus operandi. The contagion drives them insane, but it also heightens their psychic awareness, perhaps gives them their strange abilities to be shot at and not be hit. And one result of this is the way in which the Legion selects and attacks its targets. It's noted that who they attack is within the psychic will of the Emperor, because it is an undeniable fact that attacks always seem to fall in the right place at the right time, be it the devastation of Baal or when rebooted Gilliman is trying to get back to Earth and is held up. The Legion of the Damned certainly believe themselves to be directed by the Emperor, and who is to argue? Now as this malady that they've got from the warp takes hold, the victims begin to degenerate and putrefy. However, even as the body decays, it grows in supernatural vigour. Even though the Marine's limbs become rotten and twisted, they gain strength far beyond that of a normal Marine. These powers heighten as the disease rages through the victim's body. At the moment of death, each brother reaches a peak in power, at which point the raw energies of the warp transmute the death throes of the doomed Marine into a berserk orgy of destruction. Perhaps these are the ones that appear and help people before they pass away, because they're at the height of their powers and they can't be hurt. These changes are reflected by the profile and special abilities that the Marines show. We're also told that their minds have been hardened by the warp and that they can't be hurt by psychic attacks on creatures or even warp creatures themselves. Again, this sort of ties into how they seem to be so impervious to damage when attacked by various. And so those little bits from the rules, friends, that's where I'll wrap up today's video. I hope you enjoyed me going over this rather old article. I certainly enjoyed finding it and going over the information again after so long. I can see where some of the law has changed and where some of it still ties back into the original article. So, got something to say about the Legion of the Damned? Want to chat? Anything to say to me? Join me, comment down below.